Our final keynote session for tonight is the IBM Smarter Workforce Solutions keynote delivered by Nick Kouma and Sudhir Rao. Nick is the APAC region senior client partner for IBM Smarter Workforce business, and he specializes in solutioning workforce and analytics as an enabler for business outcomes, talent engagement for business growth, workforce optimization, and also leadership effectiveness across different industries. Nick has a bachelor's degree in business administration, specializing in strategic HR, and also a degree in German from the Dohn University. Sudhir Rao is the lead solutions consultant for the Smarter Workforce Solutions at IBM. He has close to 18 years of experience in architecting solutions across domains of talent management, enterprise architecture, systems engineering, business process management, and IT governance. So I'd like to call upon stage Nick and Sudhir to lead us into this session.
Do we have the clicker? I don't know if there's a proper name for that. I think everybody calls it the clicker. The slide switcher, the button. Cool. Well, while we're getting set up, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be on stage, excited to be partnering with Talview for this concept when we think about the future of recruitment and sort of the changes that are being driven based on digital disruption. You know, it's great that the professor was here on stage. He reminded me that it's important to walk away with learnings and things that you can sort of tangibly have in your pocket. And I learned two things today, or I'm walking away with two statements. One, performance is learned and it's easily unlearned. Professor, I don't know where you went, but that was really scary. When you think about bringing somebody into the company and you're saying, okay, they're going to be a high performer, they have the potential to be excellent, and you're telling me it can be unlearned? That frightens me. The other thing that I learned today during the panel discussion was that 20% of, job searches happen in the toilet? That's also scary, but that probably means the other 80% happen while waiting in traffic in India. And so, anyway, thank you so much. It looks like we have the technology set up now. We're going to walk through a few different things today. The focus for us is going to start out rather stratospheric. It's going to be a very big picture when we think about digital disruption. What has actually happened when we think about HR software, that particular landscape? I'm going to simplify it, maybe not do it justice, but put it into three different categories. Drill down then into what that means for talent acquisition, a few statistics and the implication of those statistics. We'll step into a short case study, and then Sudhir is going to show a technology we have, which is based on Watson for cognitive computing, for talent analytics. Then we'll close things up. And then I think after that, there's a short thank you, and then the beer is in your hands. The professor misled you. It was way longer than 20 minutes away. So bear with us. Okay, so human capital software vendor strategies, and I'll put it from a vendor perspective. Because of digital, and that went backwards on me. Because of digital, we're having digital difficulties. You leave me with an open mic, and I'm undoubtedly going to start singing eventually. So because of digital disruption, that puts three different categories for vendors. We first look at a single vendor category, which is really these organizations, these companies that say, come join us, be a part of our talent suite journey. It's going to give you an integrated platform across all of the features and requirements for human resources. When we think about recruitment, performance, learning, all of the components. Most of you probably realize that, okay, it sounds utopian, but it's exactly just that. It doesn't actually give you the opportunity to bring forward the best-in-class solution in each category. And so then and I don't think this clicker is working, then it comes to more of a multi-vendor strategy. where that's sort of how the world has been operated up until today. We find individual vendors who are excellent when it comes to recruitment, excellent when it comes to performance management, but we lose the value, we lose the rich quality of data to act in real time, to act quickly across each of these different constructs. And then the third one, which is really where the world is going with open source and open framework, the capability to pull from multiple disparate data sources in real time and inform your business so that you're prepared to address tomorrow's challenges today. And so as we start to break that down and think about what that actually means, it allows you to address some of these challenges, some of these difficulties that otherwise you could not have addressed before when we think about predicting performance. Even if it's point-in-time performance, something that people are choosing to unlearn, it still is going to predict it, at least for a certain extent. Let's break that down then into what that actually means for talent acquisition. I'm waiting to see how long the lag actually is. Okay, what that actually means for talent acquisition. It's a challenging landscape that you guys work in today. My father has been working for the same company for 36 years. He's had 3 jobs with that company. Today, millennials, 91% of them are anticipating that they'll stay in the same job for at most 3 years. This means that you're looking at anywhere from 15 to 20 different job changes over the duration of a career. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be committed to you. Many people jump from one place to the next today because they need career progression because we're not providing it to them. They want more money, and it's easier to get that when you negotiate fresh compared to where you already are. Okay, 25% of your new hires don't even make it to their anniversary. Ouch. You guys put a lot of effort into bringing in people into your organization. Then you can't even retain them for a year. That's painful. It almost makes you want to just go straight to the Kingfisher bar. And so how do we actually address that? How do we succinctly address these challenges? From our research, a talent acquisition strategy needs to be built really on 4 key foundational pillars. And this is sort of what has formed IBM's point of view and the way we interact with our customers. The first is around success-driven partnerships. Organizations like Talview, we embrace that you are world-class when it comes to video conferencing, the release of your talent insights. It's exciting. We recognize that as an IBM vendor, we don't do everything perfectly. And I hope nobody's recording that. I want to keep my job. No, sincerely. Success-driven partnerships, it's absolutely fundamental in a world of co-opetition. We're competing, we're cooperating together. It's critical. Recruitment is marketing. There's probably at least one individual in this room who is tasked with sourcing in a digital perspective, not necessarily picking up the phone and being a recruiter, but sourcing. Recruitment has adopted marketing strategies so that it's more focused, it's more targeted. It's campaign-driven, it's event-driven, it's segmented. It's not just a mass sifting of CVs and resumes. Making your data work, I touched on it a little bit when we think about open source and open framework. You're sitting on a wealth of data. When asked, your companies should be able to say, we know exactly what high performance looks like in our context. Should be able to answer that because technically you have that data. We fundamentally believe in empowering organizations to make the data work for you so that you are prepared for tomorrow, not just for today. And then lastly, experiences matter. The candidate experience is something that I think everybody touches on. It is crucial. It's vital. The best talent demand a great experience. We conducted a survey in 2015, a population study, where we asked 25,000 individuals when they were going through a recruitment process, and it was down to one of 2 companies. 70% of them gravitated toward the organization that provided an unmatched mobile experience in the recruitment process. Mobile makes a difference. You're applying for jobs either in the loo or in traffic jams. And so absolutely giving the candidate something which is simple, intuitive, and quick is critical. When we think about the experience of organizations in a broader perspective, we've partnered with quite a few different companies. And so what I'd like to do is tell maybe just one story of one of our customers. The company is called Regeneron. It's a pharmaceutical organization based out of the US with around, there we go, thank you. Well, we're moving around. Once we get Regeneron slide back up, you'll get to see it. It's a pharmaceutical organization. They landed a huge bid. They landed a gigantic bid that required that they grow their business in terms of end-size employees by 400 staff. At the time, they were a company of only 1,500 people. Adding 400 people to a company of 1,500 is unprecedented and frightening. How do you actually do that? Some of the challenges that they were faced with when they started with us was they said, we sort of have this really unique culture. Okay, yeah, we've heard that before. Everybody sort of says that. As we started to peel the layers back, we realized they do. They're obsessed with science. Everybody from the person who's working as an executive assistant or at reception all the way to engineers and people who are working on multifunction teams, they were obsessed with science. Absolutely obsessed with it. And so we supported them in identifying what underpins their culture, what makes their organization great, cohesive. If you bring somebody into a company who doesn't fit within the culture, it doesn't work very long. I'm sure everybody's brought that one hire in that they wish they wouldn't have because they didn't fit the company. It has a significant impact on the business. When we think about predicting performance in a larger sense, we heard about psychometric assessments or behavioral assessments, skills assessments. There's so many different assessments that are available in this world today. It's critical that you use the right one at the right time for the right job so you can predict performance. And so we think about the challenge that you guys as individuals are faced with, a recruiter's dilemma. It's critical that we're asking the right questions when we're bringing people into the company. And so I'll have Sudhir actually just show a quick example of how we can use our talent analytics capability based on IBM's Watson advertisement to help predict performance, to help overcome a recruiter's dilemma. Maybe, Sudhir, you'd like to just frame up the situation a bit more.
Hi, good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So what two of the key competencies that are being associated with HR these days are storytelling and analytics, right? Does everybody agree to that? So I want to adopt that hat and say, let me tell you a story on the analytics journey, and let's take a scenario which is a little fictitious scenario, but let's say I'm sure that when you see that scenario, you would also realize that that kind of scenario could come into anybody's problem kitty at any point in time. So let's assume that I am a business HR of a fictitious company called as Greenwell Financials, and let's also assume that a few minutes back a hiring manager whom I support came and told me that I need your support in identifying or solving a specific talent acquisition conundrum. Okay, she's given me specific details about it, and she wants a quick turnaround. So let's see that scenario, what is the specific details about that peculiarity of that scenario, and let's see how analytics could help in there. Okay, so I log into something called as a talent suite. So this is nothing but IBM Kenexa Talent Suite. This is where three things come together: the technology, the social collaboration piece, and the workforce sciences all come synergistically together to give something called as a persona-based user experience to whether it is recruiters, hiring managers, interviewers, or performance management guys, and so on. So this is that atmosphere, and this is one of the key things that he also talked about, which is called as the Open HR Initiative by IBM, which also means that one of the apps that you see, the performance app, could actually be a SuccessFactors performance app. The learning could be Cornerstone on demand, and so on. This is where we are able to get best of the breed solutions to give what is called as systems of engagement experience to employees. Okay, so but let me come to the problem. So I go to something called as a hiring app here, and I go to a particular requisition, which is actually this 137BR, which is nothing but a branch manager title, which I need to quickly fill. Each row is an open vacancy, and what I see is that, let's assume that 10 positions needed to be filled. Let's assume that 9 have been filled. 1 position needs to be filled, and what I see very easily is that, hey, there are 3 candidates in the interview stage. So I open those 3 candidates details, and this opens up what is called as a candidate list against that particular requisition. It shows me the 3 candidates. What I see is that they all have gone through something called as a cultural match assessment, and they all have scored extremely high. So let's assume that in this context, cultural fitment assessment happens at the end of the entire cycle or towards the end of the cycle, which means it's only given to certain candidates who reach towards the end of that hiring cycle. Okay. So I want to, let's say, quickly compare these 3 candidates. I run a very simple function called as speed browse. This just gives me very quickly a snapshot information stacked one against another about their education qualifications and their experience. So let's also assume from here, I'm sure it's not that readable from the far end. Let's also assume from here that they all come from great institutions, they all have the same kind of pedigree. So there's nothing that differentiates in terms of qualifications or experience, one guy over the other. What could have really differentiated would have been the cultural fitment assessment, where I actually match the values endorsed by the company against the values endorsed by these individuals. So let's also assume that they have also stacked up very well in the 98th percentile in those assessments. So let's all assume that there's nothing that really differentiates on paper one candidate over the other. Okay. So how do we use analytics in this scenario to figure out which candidate to roll out the offer letter to? So that's a conundrum that the hiring manager is facing, and that's what I as a business HR need to help her get over the scenario. So I'll just repeat: 1 position to fill, 3 great candidates, everything looks very similar about them, pedigree, experience, even the cultural fitment assessment. Now how do I figure out which candidate I should roll out the offer letter to? So I'm sure that this can be solved in many ways, but let me solve in a particular manner, just to showcase the power of the technology. It should give you a feel of the capabilities in that. So I go to something called as Talent Insights. So this is the solution that is based on Watson Analytics. Just a quick polling. How many of you heard of Watson Analytics? I think IBM need to do a better job. Okay. So Watson Analytics is a new age data discovery platform, which is basically a cognitive analytics platform, which is based on the underlying premise that I, as a business guy or as a domain guy, whether I am marketing, procurement, HR, or anything else, or healthcare management for that matter, should be able to interact with my data, which is any of these domains data. So let's take the case of HR. I, as HR function, should be able to interact with my HR data in the language of HR, which means I don't need the middleman called as IT team, which actually makes things ready for me, and then I interface with it and see it's already in a prescribed boundaries, right? So which basically means that, for example, let's take a very simple example. In my company, let's suppose we are using a lot of pre-hire assessments, and we are taking only the cream that comes through those pre-hire assessments. And let's suppose I want to analyze whether those pre-hire assessments have actually yielded the kind of results that I foresee from the people who are coming through that. Which means I want to, let's say, quickly see the performance of the people and the business results that have got by virtue of those performance against the pre-hire assessment scores. So could I just type in a natural English language box and say, show me the relationship, depict the relationship, paint the relationship between pre-hire assessment scores and, let's say, and the performance rating of the individuals, and also cross that with business results, if that's a job family to which I can really relate business results in a very easy manner. Okay, so the system would actually throw up those results, and I would be able to understand that in a very easy manner. So which means I am able to interface the system in the natural language. This is just an example of descriptive analytics. I could also do predictive analytics using that, which means in the case of, let's say, talent acquisition, typically you would do predictive analytics in the case of offer to join conversion. You're offering lots of offer letters to people, but only few of them are accepting it, or there's a lot of reneges which are happening, or maybe there are a lot of negotiations which are happening, at the end of which you end up giving a 10% increment. What if analytics could help you decide that for this kind of people, maybe you could upfront offer the 10%, and you could do away with that 1.5 years, 1.5 months of negotiation on that, and finally give up that particular amount. So that's some examples of where you could use predictive. But let's come to the specific problem. So I have this entire data set here, and as you could see, this data set is basically for my branch manager recruiting data set. It has data about all the people that we hired in the past in those specific titles of branch manager and assistant branch manager. The system also shows something which is a very useful information called as data quality. So data quality, a particular number that is given to it, is based on what we call as imbalances, skewness, outliers, blank data cells, and so on. So it looks at each field, it gives a data quality score. Why is it important? Why is it necessary for such tools to show data quality? Because we also know that practically data quality improves over time. So which means when I see the data quality, I then see whether I need to improve the data quality, which means there's something wrong at the collection time, or it's not getting collected properly that I need to go and improve. Or it could be absolutely fine. Whether there are expected outliers in performance rating, answer could be yes. So I go ahead with that particular analysis of mine. But let's come to the specific problem. I go to something called as an exploration. Exploration is nothing but the previous explorations I had done on this particular data set. Let's assume that a couple of months back, my focus was to figure out which sources I'm getting candidates from for this particular branch manager, assistant branch manager position, and so on. And the system had thrown me some data, and now I'm actually just revisiting that. So let's assume very quickly that it shows me that for assistant branch manager and branch manager position, I actually was at that time getting, 3 months back, was getting candidates more from the traditional sources of newspaper, magazines, and so on. But now more often I'm getting it from the sources, social sources, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. So in all probability, I'm getting more good candidates faster, and I'm able to fill my positions faster. But let's come to the specific problem at hand, which is which candidate to roll out the offer letter to. So I get this nice box, which is sometimes people call it as a Google box, wherein they could type something and comes the result. But it's clearly a big difference from the Google box, because Google just shows you data on what it's able to find in other sites or other documents inside that, but doesn't show the accuracy of the data or the correctness of the data. But here, this is specific to your company corporate data. So here I'm able to ask a question. The way I'm trying to solve as a business HR is, I want to figure out whether I have hired in the past, whether we as a company have hired in the past candidates or employees from these 3 companies that the candidates represent, and whether they have been able to give me eclectic performance. That's what I want to figure out. So I'm just typing in natural English language, what is the So I just typed here, what is the relationship between performance rating and ex-employer? The moment I type that, it understands that particular statement. It understands that I want to understand something called as a relationship, which means I need to show their relationship between these 2 constructs, which in this case is performance rating, ex-employer. It knows where performance rating resides. It knows what does ex-employer mean. I could have made some typographic mistakes. I could have perf rating. I could have called something else. Ex-employer, former employer, whatever I want to call it. It understands that there's a basic ontology of HR built in. That's the reason it's a specifically curated machine of Watson Analytics for HR. So anyways, it shows me its understanding of that particular problem that I gave, and it also shows me the way that's going to be visualized. So this is a packed bubble chart, and that is that's a bar graph. So let's start with the easy one, which is my.
And Sudhir, with 4 minutes left, they're probably wondering which candidate you're going to roll it out to.
Sure.
So let's
even
get
I'm
there.
wondering. Okay. So the first thing I observe is that when this chart comes up, hey, that the y-axis is actually performance rating sum. I quickly change it to, let's say, average. That's the right way of looking at it. Then I also realize that it must be showcasing data for right now for all the titles. So let me focus only on specific job titles, which is my branch manager, assistant branch manager. I get the entire data set. I'm able to filter out in a very easy manner. I also know that this is showcasing me data for the entire tenure of the employees. So since I'm right now in the talent acquisition space, I don't want to see their entire performance throughout their life in the company, which could be 10 years, for 12 years or so. I want to focus only on the first 0 to 5 years. So I get a very intuitive slider bar here, and I'm able to change and say that show me the performance in the first 5 years for the specific job titles of branch manager, assistant branch manager. To make it readable, I just make it descending by value. So what I quickly realize here is that the candidates that we hired from this particular company called as Farmville Savings and Loan, they gave an average of performance rating 3.5. Assuming that performance rating is also closely linked to business results, it's a well-groomed system, I can then make out that there's statistically a big difference between 3.5 versus the next best company, which is 2.8 performance rating. That's the people that I hired from that particular company. So I could stop here and say, I have done enough analysis. In my opinion, I as business HR could recommend that please go and roll out the offer letter to the person who comes from this particular company. But with a little bit of statistic background, which most HR these days are vying for, I also want to see what is the size of this population on the basis of which this average has come about. So when I look at something called as recommended visualizations, the system says, or Watson says, that I'm recommending you to see this data in the form of a tree map or a packed bubble chart. Let's look at tree map, and people who know a little bit of statistics know that packed bubble or tree map is a very nice way of looking at the size of the population based on which those aggregates are coming about. So Watson kicks in, and let's make it a little more readable. Okay, so I've just played with a little bit of configuration. What I've done is, I said size the box, each individual box, which is actually each company name, to be based on the number of employees, which means bigger the box, bigger the number of employees in that population size. That is one. Second is the gradient of the color, the density of the color, to be based on performance rating. And in this company, assume that 5 is better performance rating than 1. So it shows me that this particular box, which is Farmville Savings and Loan, that particular company, has actually given us the maximum number of employees, and also the performance rating is one of the highest there, which is 3.5. The next best is this particular company. So now I could say that now, after looking at the sample size as well, I believe that we should roll out the offer letter to this particular, the candidate who comes from this particular company. But hold on, Talent Insights also shows, or Watson also shows something called as additional insights. He said, look at the top. It says performance rating by age. This is additional thing which is found an interesting pattern in the data, that you know what, the performance rating varies by age. The highest performance rating you get in this particular job titles in the 0 to 5 years is from the age group which comes from the age group of 29. So that's additional insight, which means that when I look at those 3 candidates, I can also look at their age group and then look at from my previous data and then figure out which one to roll out the offer letter to. So this is where I can now take a decision to roll out offer letter to, let's say, Farmville Savings and Loan. If I want to also, let's say, further drill down on the basis of gender or let's say grade for that matter, let's make it grade. Grade should be more interesting.
And maybe, Sudhir, we save that for the teaser for the next one.
Okay.
I know we're pretty light on time now, maybe over time. Really appreciate it. I know that there were a few questions, but I don't know that we have one question. We do have time for one question. And the first hand I saw was over here in the red, or was I misreading and you were stretching?
So in this case, what I have done is, let's assume that I typically hire from a marquee set of companies, right? This was a very simplistic example to show the power of the technology. Yeah. But in your case, where you're talking about that I have not ever hired from a particular company, would you be able to group that company with a certain set of companies? So you could also do that grouping, right? That this is what I call as my first preference list, or the marquee 1 list, marquee 2 list, and so on. You could also do those kind of things, which is nothing but data grouping, right? So it all depends on the problem to solve. It all depends on data at that time in hand. So this was just a very simplistic example to show the way you could do analytics in a new age manner, right?
So basically, you're saying, to kind of put it in layman terms, once you type the query, you can say, okay, I want to find the relationship between companies similar and the reliability or the performance, etc.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
It would do its analytics on its own and give you some data point.
Correct.
So that's what I meant by HR ontology built into the system. Yeah. For example, just a quick, sorry Nick. So when I look at grade wise, right? So this is additional insight. The data that finally it threw up, which was Farmville Savings and Loan, I just said, okay, dissect it by grade wise. Now it gives me additional insight. It says, you know, you got very poor performance from the same company when you hired in these grades. These 3 grades. You got better performance when you hired in this particular grade. That's additional insight for me, right? Yep. So I don't know about that particular position. Maybe it's in a different grade. So I am also getting data which I'm able to, you know, further diversify into or dissect into or drill down into.
Great view, Sudhir. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We're still going to be here for beers if you want to ask any more questions. Thanks.
Thank you.